Okay, greetings everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Steve Clemens. I direct the foreign policy programs here at the New America Foundation. I want to just say a special greetings to our watchers now live on C-SPAN and also to those watching this broadcast over the Washington Note and over New America Foundation's website. I've been hopeful of having Wadah Khanfar in our program series for quite a long time. He is one of the most interesting journalist that's been covering the Middle East in sort of new and direct ways. And before you even get into the question of Al Jazeera and Al Jazeera's its growth in the U.S. market. Recently, Al Jazeera English has gone 24-hour, 24/7 on important urban cable networks around the United States. But Al Jazeera is one of these phenomenons where you've seen emerge in a rapidly short period of time a major global sprawling news network. I was just recently in Israel, was recently in Athens, Greece, and you see Al Jazeera everywhere. And I think at the time when I became interested, before the Iraq War, the U.S. government would commend Al Jazeera as the sort of a growth of civil society and growth of expression, et cetera, in the region. But then you began to notice as well that a lot of governments were uncomfortable with Al Jazeera, whether it was Saudi Arabia, whether it was Israel, whether it later became the United States. And to some degree, I do think it is the role of think tanks and provocateurs and journalists and writers and pundits to eventually bite the hand that feeds them. I mean, fundamentally, you've got to walk a balance between reporting, dealing with things, and coming in. And I've been fascinated and impressed by the growth of Al Jazeera. And I'm one of the people in the United States who has long been supportive of Al Jazeera's activities around the world and in the United States, and have been disturbed by the discrimination that has been written about in terms of giving access to Al Jazeera and others. But let me tell you a few things about Wadah Khanfar. Wadah Khanfar is managing director of the Al Jazeera network in Doha. He was, interestingly, head of the Baghdad bureau in 2003, luckily not in the office when it was bombed. There was a controversy at one point where George Bush, in a discussion with Tony Blair, allegedly joked about and talked about bombing the Al Jazeera's office. And I, at the time, was fascinated by the revelations of this and wrote quite a bit about it in the Washington Note. Mr. Khanfar wrote a great piece saying, "Mr. Bush, why are you trying to bomb me?" or something along those lines in the Guardian magazine at the time. Some of you who follow New American Foundation activities will remember Yusri Fuda, who has spoken at New American Foundation many times, who was very active in this and was in London. And it was a big issue. The U.S. government talking at any level, joking or not joking, about bombing a news bureau of the Arab world's largest news network. So we're at a new point. Wadah Khanfar has been trying to come to the United States every once in a while and has had visa challenges ever since this piece in The Guardian. And luckily, I think the Obama administration is pushing reset with Al Jazeera, pushing reset with Wadah Khanfar. He's here in Washington, and we have a very rare and I think useful opportunity to hear from him about how running the Al Jazeera network matters, why it matters, where it's going, and how he looks as an analyst and as a newsman as well at many of the challenges that exist in the Middle East today. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Wadah Khanfar. I look forward to a presentation, and we'll have a discussion there. So please welcome Wadah Khanfar. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Actually, it is friendly. Normally, people say this is the Director General of the most controversial channel in the world, So luckily, you have not introduced me like that. And actually, I don't know why the controversy. And looking back at Al Jazeera, which started in 1996, from 1996 until 2001, Al Jazeera was regarded in the West as the foremost of freedom of expression and defending democracy, and we were celebrated actually by many circles, including the American administration at that time. In 2001, things have changed dramatically and immediately because Al Jazeera had the only bureau in Kabul, in Afghanistan, when the war started, or 11 September took place, and Al Jazeera continued to report the same professional standards that existed before 2001 actually were implemented post 11 September. But we were faced at that moment in time by great criticism in many Western circles and many governments, including Mr. Rumsfeld, who in many of his press conferences mentioned Al Jazeera. Time and, and we tried to correct, we tried to write to him and to send messages that Al Jazeera never shown any frame of beheading. He continued to talk about Al Jazeera and the beheading story. Al Jazeera has never ever actually broadcast any frame of beheading, for example. And Al Jazeera always used to play a major role in defending journalists, especially those who have been kidnapped, and try to introduce something on the screen that might lead to their release. And we took very open and frank situation and position on issues related to kidnapping and especially civilians and journalists. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, during the last 8 years, from 2001, now we are in 2009, I would like just to look back and say, media failed people in general. I think a lot of news channels, broadcasting corporations, and journalists did follow the official line on issues related to the Middle East, Iraq, and Afghanistan in particular. A lot of people were overwhelmed by patriotic feeling, and for a while they brushed professional standards aside and they started, defending official policies of governments. I understand that journalists are great and brave when it comes to issues related to domestic politics, but on foreign politics, a lot of news corporations followed the same line that spokesmen and women and that military and politicians actually introduced regarding the Middle East. And therefore, we were in front of new tide, huge one, where journalists would like to take a side, where journalists are introducing news with analysis and commentary that undermines balance and objectivity. Al Jazeera did not do that. We continued with the same philosophy and professional standards that we had before 2001. The opinion and the other opinion. The opinion and the other opinion was the motto that Al Jazeera launched in 1996. The other opinion is important for us to listen to, not because we would like to sympathize with, not because we would like to defend, but because once we listen to the other opinion, I will be able to better judge the situation. I cannot understand the socio-political, dynamics in the Middle East if I only listen to those who I like or those who stand pro, certain kind of policies. It will make wrong judgment if I only listen to one trend of thought, And this is why I think a lot of mistakes regarding Iraq and Afghanistan, political decisions that were made in Washington, emerged from the fact that people wanted only to listen to one voice. They didn't want to listen to a variety of voices. They didn't want to accept diversity within the scene in the Middle East. Because what we see today was actually spoken about 8 years ago, but they didn't reach here because most of the Western media, they didn't want these voices to appear on the screens. And it will appear as a marginal, condemned kind of analysis, So this is why we resorted to much more simplified, reductionist understanding of the region. We reduced the complexity of history for thousands of years in Iraq into a slogan, removing Saddam Hussein, establishing democracy. And therefore, everyone must follow. No one can question. If you question it, you are not with us. You are against us. I'm questioning. Just I want to understand. You can't. So there was some kind of atmosphere, actually, that led to regard Al Jazeera as something from the other camp, against us. And we are started to hear from Washington and from London and from many other governments in part of the alliance. We started hearing them talking about Al Jazeera as the cause for destabilization in Iraq and inciting violence in Iraq. What happened to us actually when we were in Baghdad? I was the bureau chief of Baghdad. Our bureau was bombed, and one of our correspondents was killed. Few were injured. 20 were detained in Guantanamo, were detained in Abu Ghraib prison. Some of them were tortured. We did speak about the torturing that is taking place in Abu Ghraib long time before any other Western media spoke about it. It was not taken seriously even by journalists, because they thought, these guys are just propagating certain kind of propaganda against the Americans. It was not true. Our journalists were tortured in Abu Ghraib. And until today, the bombing of our office in Baghdad and in Kabul, we did not receive any result of any investigation or any apology, as if the matter did not happen. And it continued as, something normal. Of course, for our audience and for our journalists and for the entire Arab world, it was not normal. Because people, when they watched Tariq Ayoub, who was killed, I don't know if you have witnessed that, but the amount of sympathy, anger, and frustration that swept the Arab world that day was unbelievable. Why I'm saying so? I'm saying so because I'm not saying, we are the only people who got it right. But we tried our best to act as journalists, not politicians. We did not want to take side in a moment of time when everyone was asked to take side. And if you don't take side, it means that you are against the good people and you are pro the evil people. I think we did not look at ourselves as judges of who is good and who is bad. We wanted to analyze, to understand, to report. We were not given that opportunity. But we continued with all these kind of difficulties. And today I stand in front of you and say that most of the issues that we reported about in Iraq and Afghanistan during the last 8 years, I can say and I argue that nothing was proven wrong since then. And I think a lot of people, from the bombing of Fallujah, when we argued that there are certain weapons used, and that was denied at that moment in time by the military spokespeople. Later on, we discovered that it was right. The killing of the civilians in Afghanistan, now everyone talks about it. The torture in Abu Ghraib, everyone talks about it. We were the first to raise these issues. We are not anti-American, and I'm sorry to say so, because unfortunately a lot of people would like to say that Al Jazeera takes anti-American line. I don't think that even the Arabs or the Muslims are anti-American. I think the Arabs and the American and the Muslims love the American values. They love the ideals that this country stood for. Democracy, freedom of expression, liberty, all these kind of issues. We love it. Al Jazeera itself was a result of a Western way of thinking. When we started in 1996, 70 of our journalists and editors who actually founded Al Jazeera came from BBC originally. The last 4 heads of news in Al Jazeera Arabic came from BBC. So we did embrace this freedom of expression philosophy, and we supposed to be part of this way of thinking and these values that all of us love and appreciate. So I don't think people are anti-American in the region. I think the people were anti certain policies and strategies that were implemented without proper consideration. That is as simple as that. Besides that, I don't think that really there is anti-American sentiment when it comes to the ideals and the values and the people of the United States of America. And that was what Al Jazeera was trying to do. Yes, we had a lot of anger and frustration. Our region is going through huge transformation. We are hosting 8 conflict zones and hotspots, the most complicated in the world, are in the vicinity of Al Jazeera headquarters, in a way or another. Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, Darfur, Palestine, Iran. That is our audience that we report to. The victims of these wars are our audience. They sit in their bedrooms or sit in their living room and they watch what is happening next door. So here Al Jazeera is speaking and talking to those people who are actually affected by all these kind of conflict zones. So you would, imagine a moment of time that there is a little bit of frustration, a lot of anger on the streets, and that will be projected in a moment of time through Al Jazeera, not because we would like to pick up marginal stories and make it big, because it is the reality on the ground. We cannot afford but have that on our screen because it is happening for our audience, And I wish if a day will come without having a headline on Al Jazeera News that there is no, suicide bombing and there is no attack and there is no killing or there is no frustration. Because unfortunately, this is the reality. On a daily basis, we are seeing these kind of issues, and we as journalists cannot brush it aside and hide it and say, no, the reality is magnificent. The reality is not magnificent and is still continuing to have we have a lot of difficulties in dealing with these kind of issues. How are we moving ahead? Where are we going from now? Mr. Obama delivered a great speech in Ankara, and he delivered another great speech in Cairo. People were relieved. And the amount of response was overwhelming from the public in the Arab world. People felt for the first time that they have a choice, or they have a new vision displayed in front of them. Before, they used to have no choice. They were asked either to take a side with me or against me. Now they have someone who is telling them, frankly, we would like to hear your voices. We would like to establish a dialogue. We would like to extend a new hand. We are not anti-Islam Muslims. We are not anti-Arabs. That was beautiful, magnificent discourse. Following the Arab opinion at that moment in time, I think definitely that created a window of opportunity for dialogue. Of course, a lot of people would argue that this is magnificent speech, but in reality, nothing is changing. Some others will defend and say, let us wait and see. You cannot demand from the man to change things overnight, because this is a matter of, complicated change that should take place. But at least there is a debate and discussion that is taking place. What does that mean for us? It means that there is an opportunity of healing not only the relationship between the United States of America and the Arabs and the Muslims, but also healing the wounds from inside the Islamic world. During the last 8 years, we have seen rising conflict between Sunnah and Shia, between Hamas and Fatah, between Muslims and some Christians in Egypt. We have seen domestic troubles in Darfur. We have seen rising tension in Yemen. We have seen civil war in Somalia. People are killing each other in Pakistan. All of that is happening within the Islamic world. It is not between the Muslims and the Americans. It is within the Islamic. The crisis now is actually fragmenting the societies, is deepening to an extent that we are in need for this kind of healing. We are in need for sorting out these problems to save what is left. Otherwise, day after day, we are seeing chaos and anarchy sweeping the Middle East. And that will be very difficult and complicated to deal with if we do not open new chapter of relationship between the American administration and the Arab and Muslim world. So it is a need for us also. And a lot of people who have been harmed by these kind of events are not the Americans. It is the Arabs and Muslims themselves. And we know that for sure. We know that we don't want to continue living our life and our children's life in the shade of guns and killing and civil wars and conflicts and chaos. That is not a choice for a human being he eventually has to live his life and to look forward to much more peaceful life for his children. Media can play a major role of bridging the divide. But what kind of media? Media that takes depth in consideration. Media that does not simplify things, reduce it into simple checkpoints and simple list of slogans. Media that understands the social and cultural fabric of societies that they are reporting from. Media that knows a little bit of history, because history in the Arab world is very important. It's a huge issue. It is very big. It is present in our life. It is not something that has happened in the past. We can forget about it. Something that continues to create new ideas and themes and atmosphere of thinking for all of us. And unfortunately, more and more journalists just depend on Wikipedia to understand complicated conflict between the Sunnah and Shia that has taken place for the last 1,002 years. They read it overnight, or they read it while they are just departing their headquarters to come to the Middle East. Next day, they are on the screen, experts and analysts of great conflicts that have been taking place for centuries. That is not a choice for media to be really informative and to give excellent understanding for the audience and to empower them with knowledge. We are not empowering people with knowledge. We are giving people some data, fragmented one, that does not really create balance, but it does create a lot of, vague understanding The Middle East, if I look at the news, and sorry to say so, I have been watching news during the last few days here. If you look at the Middle East, it's a black box. People are killing each other, suicide bombing, everything is going wrong. You know, if I were an ordinary American, I would say, you know what, to hell to this region. I don't care about it. I mean, these guys are crazy. I think they are humans. They're not aliens. They would also love to live their life, you know, like the Americans would love to live their life, you know. We are like anyone else. We have families, we have children, we have life. We would like to celebrate life. We would like to enjoy our life, and we would like to live in peace. But there are issues that are happening. And unfortunately, the foreign factor is very important in it. The fragmentation that is taking place in the region was a result of many things. The major and the most important one was foreign intervention, without consideration to the interests of the people themselves. So that is something that the international society should look at. It is not because we are crazy and would like to kill each other and make suicide bombing. It is not. It is because we have inherited complicated situation. Since the First World War until today, this region did not see stability or balance. You know, we did not. We saw territorial states, authoritarian regimes, supported by the West, sometimes for certain narrow interest. Legitimacy of these regimes were undermined by the public. People do not see that they are represented in front of superpowers. They see they are dealing with puppets rather than dealing with leaders who have vision. So therefore, people are in quest for much more balanced paradigm of thinking. They would like to see something that could represent them. This is why pro-Arab nationalism emerged, and then later on Islamic movements emerged, and a lot of people emerged in order to represent that kind of feeling that, you know, we would like to establish a collective mind in the region. After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, we are now having 50-something state. And the figure keep changing, you know, because, you know, some countries join, some countries are in a state of separation. We don't have stability. We need to understand that, and we'd like to deal with it. And journalists should look at it carefully. To continue covering the region with the way that we are covering it, we are not serving the audience, neither we are serving political leadership or anyone else. We are giving them, or misleading them sometimes, to take different and, you know, maybe wrong decisions. I wonder if we did really cover the Middle East as it's supposed to be covered, would we have 11 September? Would we as journalists be able to warn or to introduce knowledge about what is happening that could really lead to something that might not have created this kind of violence? Did we have to go through all these kind of difficulties at this moment in time in Iraq and in Afghanistan? Had journalists really been open to other opinions and listened to all kind of, you know, society factors and try to introduce much more balanced understanding of Iraq and Afghanistan? We did not do that. This is why we became partners with politicians. I do not accept politicians to lead the way for journalists. That is wrong. That has never been the Western tradition at all. But in foreign politics, during the last 8 years, it is the case. Politicians are drawing the editorial lines for a lot of us. And that is not, should cease to exist, actually. And we should start fresh. We should understand the responsibility that we have in front of our audience. Anyway, Al Jazeera, today, we are lucky that eventually people can see us here in Washington because we are available on cable. For years now, we tried. And actually, eventually, we are here. You know, a lot of rumors were created about Al Jazeera, but I think now people can see for themselves and judge for themselves. We demand from the people to see Al Jazeera and to judge what they say, what they see. We don't want to speak good about ourselves because media is there, something that you cannot hide. It is on the screen. Go watch it and see if what Al Jazeera is broadcasting, something that you really adds knowledge and equip you with proper understanding of the world or not. That choice, I leave it for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we ask you Ben? Of course, my microphone is not working.
Your voice is...
Yeah, we've got... We can Thank you so much for your outline and stimulating comments. Time Magazine and other publications have regularly said that you're one of the great Arab leaders of vision in the region. And I'm interested in just posing this first question to you. When I am on Al Jazeera shows, I'm often paired with clerics or scholars or other people from the region, obviously have different worldview, but it's very clear that there's a lot of doubt about the United States. Even while there's fascination about Obama, there's doubt in Obama's ability to achieve things. So as a leader with vision in the region, what advice would you give Barack Obama, the U.S. government, with what its pretensions and objectives are in the region to try to overcome some of those doubts? What are the measuring sticks, the benchmarks that your world needs to see to take the United States more seriously?
I think I warn against the micro-involvement of issues in the region. I've seen that people, when they are trying to revisit the policy and the strategy, they're just speaking about details, not the overall. I think the region is important for the United States of America for many reasons. One of them, we have rising powers now in the world. And the Americans have to understand who could they deal with. The problem is if we will continue just enhancing the details without looking at the overall picture, we might be even lost in the details and we will not achieve much. People have, really they appreciated the speech or the speeches and the discourse and a lot of things that happened here. And it was really something great what happened in Washington. However, that might not continue forever because people would like to see something on the ground, not details. We don't want to be caught again in semantics on issues related to Palestine, issues related to Afghanistan and Iraq. Cosmetic changes. We need something important and something with substance. And that's what I can say at this moment.
Let me just follow up with one. Right now I just was over discussing at a conference in Europe Israel-Palestine issues. And settlements being a large one. I'd be interested in any thoughts you have on the settlement issue. But one of the things that seems to be clear is that many, not all, but many Arab Muslims don't believe that the United States is a fair broker unless they see Israel pay a cost or if they see some negative for Israel. And likewise, Israel, in terms of talking about the very term pro-Israel, almost requires there to be a zero-sum loss for Arab interests. Does the network promote the notion, or do you see developing anywhere in the Arab world the notion that you can have a win-win solution that's not based upon one side getting a tilt from the United States that ultimately leads to a cost to the other? This is one of the biggest issues that perplexes me with people talking about Arab-Israeli peace possibilities.
We can, for example, take the issue of settlements. We can forever argue about the issue of settlements, and then we can be caught in details. Okay, this settlement, how many meters they extended, how many houses were built, and so on and so forth, without looking at the big picture. The big picture says the following, that the Palestinians did not win anything out of this peace process. If you take the reality right now on the ground and the amount of suffering and the amount of economic crisis that the Palestinians are going through, and the fragmentation of the West Bank and the siege on Gaza and all these kind of issues that are taking place at this moment in time, it does not give magnificent picture about what the peace process should be about. I think, people are negotiating for how many years since Oslo now? Things are not getting much better. There's no delivery on the ground. That is number one. Second, people do not feel that this process is actually moving towards something that could really be materialized, as if the process itself has become the target, not the peace. We are talking about the process. The process should maintain itself. The process should continue. But process for what? The process is supposed to lead into something solid. That something solid does not exist. People have lack of vision of describing what exactly this process should lead to, as if the politicians are not brave enough to confront this goal. So they would like to pass time through just fragmenting the scene and speaking about the details. And that is a problem. Yes, I argue a lot of people in the region, including, the most radical, would argue at this moment in time that we need something that could be workable, something that could be durable. Everyone understands balance of power. The most extremists in the region would see the news and read the newspapers and understand that things are changing. And they do change as well. You know, sometimes we look at these actors as aliens who do not understand anything, and we deal them in one way or another. I think that is wrong. What Al Jazeera has been doing for the last, 13 years is introducing all opinions. And I think a politician should look at all opinions, open dialogue with everyone, speaking to everyone. All people who are influential should be, included in discussion. That will lead to something. But if you feel that people are excluded, I don't think that they will be part of any peace process.
Thank you. Let me open the floor. Let's go to this gentleman here.
Mohammed Al-Minshawi, editor of Arab Insight on Tucker Washington. Thank you very much for your fine presentation. Did you meet or will you meet with any American officials, and if so, who and why? And the second part...
I didn't plant that.
Okay. The Economist magazine mentioned in last issues, which focus on the Arab world, about the role Al Jazeera played in maintaining the Arab identity, the feeling of being Arab, and it said it succeeded more than any political movement in recent history to maintain the feeling of Arab. Do you agree with this statement? And if so, was it intention of Al Jazeera to preserve the Arab identity?
Okay. My visit to Washington was to speak to you at this forum and to speak to some other think tanks as well, and to communicate with our colleagues at the broadcasting center. As you know, we have the biggest broadcasting center maybe between Arabic and English channel here in Washington. And also to speak to some officials and to some journalists. And yes, we have requested certain meetings, and we are in the process of arranging some meetings. Regarding Al Jazeera, we have never thought of ourselves as a political or ideological movement. We have never thought of ourselves as a reform movement. We have thought of ourselves as journalists who would like to practice the profession based on universally accepted, professional standards. And that's actually what we have been doing. However, if I interpret what you are saying, just to be clear, it was not us who demanded that position. It was not Al Jazeera that worked to be the voice of the Arabs, for example. It happened that there was vacuum, mistrust between the public and governments. And people were looking for something to symbolically represent them. Maybe they found Al Jazeera as the voice of, independent opinion, independent from governments that could really do something. So the vacuum led to the status that Al Jazeera is enjoying as the entity introduces coherent identity maybe in the Arab world. Because from Morocco to Oman, people watch the same headlines, and that may lead to certain priorities as well in their mind of understanding the region. But we have never really introduced ourselves as players within the region. We wanted to act only as journalists.
Thank you.
Sorry? We have asked many officials actually at the State Department and the White House, and we hope very soon to receive some answers.
I'll be blogging about it later in the week after the meetings take place. This gentleman right here, in the microphone, please.
I am Jamil Shami. I'm a political analyst and activist in the Arab American community and American Muslim community. Short comment and a question. First, the very purpose I am here is to press on your hand to say you are filling a void, a needed void, onward, forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My question is, our community here is concerned these days about something that the American administration seeking peace in the Middle East seems to be promoting, which is normalizing relations between, or asking for normalizing relations between Arab countries and Israel, while the Arab initiative is to do that after Israel abide by relinquishing what they occupied. Your information and opinion. Thank you.
Again, as I said, I'm afraid that people will concentrate on details on the issue. And people had hope and they still have some hope that what is happening in Washington will lead to real change. And this is a window of opportunity, and as I said, it will not continue forever because, delivery is important on these issues. So far, what we are seeing, there is no, I would say a lot of people and analysts, at least who appear on Al Jazeera, would argue that they don't see very much of change. What we see is magnificent discourse, but without action. And we are repeating maybe same stories that we have been living through during the last 30 or 40 years regarding the peace process and settlements, regarding the normalization of relationship with Israel, regarding a lot of issues. And in my opinion, eventually these are details that will never materialize in something concrete that might change the reality.
Very back, right here in the middle, this gentleman.
My name is Eddie Eichus. I wanted to know what the reaction has been to your reporting on Iran and whether there's any kind of plans to have Al Jazeera Farsi service.
Actually, first of all, we did report elections in Iran as many other networks did for both Arabic and English news.
Were you put under the same restrictions?
And eventually, immediately after the elections finished that same day, our reporters were asked to leave from Tehran. And of course, we continue to report through our bureau, which has Iranians working in Tehran. Unfortunately, I would say the story, we still face restrictions on covering the story on Tehran. As you know, images were, during especially the first few days, censored, and we were not allowed to film. And that created a bit of a problem. And we depended, like many others, on YouTube and on Twitter, of covering images and the stories that emerged. However, we had also excellent network of analysts within Iran from various groups appearing on Al Jazeera and covering the story and telling us information that we may not be able to film. That is regarding the issue of Iran. Are we going to have a Persian channel or not? In principle, Al Jazeera actually is brainstorming the idea of expansion in general. I mean, we have Al Jazeera English now, but we would like in the future maybe to concentrate on certain other languages and mainly in the region. But I cannot tell you that we have a definite decision on that issue.
This gentleman here, and we'll go right here.
My name is Tamam Al-Barazi from Al-Wadah Al-Arabi magazine. I wonder first how, I follow the Al Jazeera Arabic very closely. I think you are very biased in reporting about when it comes to Iran and Syria and Hezbollah. I mean, you are pro them. I mean, you don't have even a second opinion allowed to appear on these issues. Most of the time, you are with the Syrian regime or
Let's
the
get
other.
to the question.
Why? I mean, why this bias? Why you take all over the world two opinion except when it comes to these three issues? Hezbollah, Lebanon, and Syria. Secondly, how can you sustain yourself if your advertisement is zero? You have only the Qatari petrol and Qatari gas advertising. How can you sustain yourself?
Interesting questions.
Number one, the issue of Iran, I, of course, disagree with you. I mean, that is not true at all, entirely. I mean, we have taken very clear coverage on the issue of Iran, whereby the opinion and the other opinion, again, was monitored by minute. We have a quality assurance. If you would like to say that we are biased compared with other networks that cover the story of Iran, it's up to you. But when it comes to our standards, when we had conservatives, we have to balance them with reformists at the same time, on the same news bulletin. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. That is the standard that we followed. Unfortunately, other networks didn't do that. Some people did rally. They have taken, again, on the issue of Iran, I have seen some kind of coverage in the Western media where people have, were just supporting one way of thinking. We cannot afford to do so. That will be a departure from our norm. Regardless of what we think about the conservatives, for example, they have the choice, they have the opportunity to appear on the screen. Our relationship with Iran was never the most smooth relationship between a TV station and our bureau was closed twice in Iran. The first time our bureau was closed because we did report about the only coverage of the Arab minority or the people, the Iranians from Arab origin in the southern in Al Ahwaz region was done by Al Jazeera. 12 reports that led to a law by the parliament to close our bureau and a huge protest against Al Jazeera. Then the second time it happened when we did start reporting as well about certain kind of conflicts within the Iranian society. And again, our bureau was closed in 1996 for 1 year, you know. So our relationship with the Iranian government was not the most smooth, but that did not lead us to take a stance against the Iranian government pro-Musawi. We did balance our coverage between Musawi and Ahmadinejad. Some people would judge us because they wanted us to take the same stance like many other networks, whereby, okay, we are pro-Musawi reformists. That is not the way that we do things. When it comes to other issues, right, like Syria, our relationship with Syria has never been the smoothest. And our bureau many times was closed as well. We were amongst few TV stations that gave platform to opposition leaders inside Syria and outside Syria. Just 2 weeks ago, when the head of Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Bayanouni, who's classified as the arch enemy of the regime in Syria, appeared on the screen for 1 hour. And many other leaders within the Syrian community.
My friend,
not true.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't imagine any leader from the Syrian opposition or any arrest within Syria or any human abuse that happened in Syria that was not covered by Al Jazeera. You know, but again, as I said, we do not play a role of being the campaigners for certain opposition groups in order to wage war against the government. That's not our position. That is what they can do, and we will report about them. But they cannot ask us to be the campaigners against this regime or that.
I happen to know a case where Al Jazeera anchorman Yusri Fuda was arrested in Syria. So, you know, but in any case, yes. Right here? No, I'm sorry. Look, we have rules. Well,
okay. It is not a secret that Al Jazeera was founded and sponsored and funded by government of Qatar, you know, and until this day, it is not true that we didn't get a cent out of advertising. We do. But, you know, by choice, I would say that we are not very keen on commercializing Al Jazeera, especially news channel. Why? Advertising in the region is controlled by governments, and a lot of advertisers will not put their ads on Al Jazeera unless we have good relationship with these governments. Commercialization of Al Jazeera means that we have to be friendly with all Arab governments in the region. And that will be the end of Al Jazeera as we know it. So therefore, we do not accept to be, to put commercial standards above professional standards. The agreement that we have with Qatar has been respected for the last 13 years. Qatar established Al Jazeera, but Qatar does not dictate the editorial policy of Al Jazeera. Qatar has, benefited from Al Jazeera because it has hosted Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera helped also the introduction of Qatar to the world, because it really made Qatar obvious on international and on regional scene. But that does not mean that Al Jazeera took a line to defend the state of Qatar or to be the spokesperson of the Qatari foreign politics. That is not the true. If it was true, we would have never been accepted by the Arab audience as the most credible news source, because many other channels in the region were established with billions of dollars, much more than what Qatar spent on Al Jazeera, but they could not really match Al Jazeera in its credibility and popularity in the Arab world, because they always continue to be the mouth of certain governments. That was a red line that we did not cross at all.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Christina Tennant. I'm a UN consultant and writer who has lived in the Middle East, lived and worked in the Middle East for 10 years, and as such, I have a special knowledge and affection for the Arab people. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Thank you.
I remember, I've been a follower and admirer of Al Jazeera ever since you people began, because having lived in the Middle East and listening to the coverage here, listening to the coverage in Europe and in the Middle East, because I don't get my news just from U.S. sources, because it's very hard to get the real news here. And I really want to commend you on the service that you provide for the world community, not just for your own region. My question is, at the moment, do you have foreign journalists working on your staff? And
Do we have foreign?
Foreign journalists,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and which countries they're from? And what is the editorial policy regarding their coverage of the news? Is there any?
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
We have actually the most diverse maybe newsroom in the world when it comes
I
to
can validate.
We have about 53 nationality working for our newsroom from the entire Arab world and from all over the world. You know, from America, from Britain, from Latin America, Africa, Asia, wherever you go. I mean, our recruitment policy is to look at the credential of the journalist himself, regardless of his, nationality, religion, culture, whatever the case. Because, and by the way, I always tell the people, such kind of diversity in a newsroom is difficult to streamline in certain direction. I mean, if there is a conspiracy that would like to establish an editorial policy that would like to impose, you don't bring all these kind of people and tell them, please, I would like you to follow this line. Diversity within Al Jazeera is actually an assurance that Al Jazeera is independent, because every journalist has joined Al Jazeera was never pressurized at all, and we have people from all walks of life with us. Then we never dictated on them how the editorial policy should be. Otherwise, we would have been really in a bad shape.
Very back. Yeah, the gentleman with his hand up. Unfortunately, I'm blinded by the light, so I can't quite see you, but that's the right guy.
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Gelbart. I'm from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. I have a question. You mentioned that based on Al Jazeera's coverage, you don't want your children to grow up in the shadow of guns, and you want everyone to have a peaceful future and things like this. But I watch Al Jazeera and I see things like the birthday celebration for Samir Kuntar, the terrorist from Lebanon, and similar glorifications of this type of thing. And I wanted to know how you can balance that with what you said today.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, in issues related to the concept of terrorism, in principle, we have a difficulty of understanding or dealing with, and maybe there are certain issues regarding to terrorism has not been clarified properly, especially the definition of who is the terrorist and who is not the terrorist. This is why the editorial policy of Al Jazeera since the beginning was not to use the word terrorism unless if it's qualified. The so-called terrorist, so-called terrorism. If we would like to take certain standards in describing who is the terrorist and who is not the terrorist, we will appoint ourselves as judges and start distributing titles on people. So we rather describe things as it is. We don't say terrorist movement. We say the name of the movement. We don't say the terrorist leader. We say the name of the leader and the group that he is leading, simply. So if you come to the region, the issue of terrorism is very relative. A lot of people who we may internationally feel that they are terrorists, for some people they may not think that they are terrorists. And then we will go into huge argument. We as a media organization, we don't feel that we should really to go into that discussion. We will just describe the phenomena or the story as it is, without getting involved in giving judgment. It is politically loaded terminology, and I feel much better to distance ourselves from it. And we, by the way, we were not the only network or media organization in the world that ceased from using the word terrorism and terrorists. So there are relative stories that we could cover, and it could look sometimes as, like the issues of promoting, or not promoting. We were accused of promoting Osama bin Laden tapes. It was not true. We did cover Osama bin Laden's speeches and Ayman al-Zawahiri's speeches, as we covered every other incident and newsworthy event that happened in the region, based on certain professional standards. And we felt that it is our duty to do so. Now, a lot of people argued, especially here in the West, that once you put Osama bin Laden on the screen, it means you are promoting his terroristic ideas, or so on and so forth. We thought that it is not true. Professional standards say that there is an event. When Osama speaks, that is news. We cover it. But that doesn't mean we glorify it. Actually, sometimes we help in demystifying this kind of discourse, because it will be followed by analysis, it will be followed by a lot of discussion, and a lot of people will be doubtful about certain issues. We are teaching our people to be more rational in receiving stories like that or speeches like that, and allow them to have some kind of time to contemplate and to think about this so-called terrorist or that so-called terrorist.
This gentleman here.
Thank you. Brian Toro from the Center for American Progress. Though the Obama administration has recently engaged with the Syrians and they've broached the possibility of engaging with the Iranians, its stance on engaging with Hamas so far has pretty much mirrored that of the Bush administration. Do you think the time to engage Hamas has come, and is this the kind of tangible step that the Arab public sphere is looking for? And Mr. Clemens, if you could chime in as well, that'd be great.
Thank you. You know, I would like to say that in general, I feel that we should speak to all. I'll give you a story from Al Jazeera. When we started in 1996, Arab media did not host Israelis. They took a stance against the Israelis because they think that hosting Israelis is normalization. Al Jazeera was the first TV station to allow the Israelis to appear on the screen, including officials, including military, and including analysts. We were condemned at that time because this is not patriotic. We are going against the Arab. Until today, actually, when I stand in a press conference or a lecture in Cairo or in Rabat or any other capital in the Arab world, the major issue that I will be confronted with is the issue of hosting the Israelis. We will be accused always that we are normalizing relationship between the Arab world and the Israelis. I think, as a journalist and as someone who's living in this region, that we need to talk to everyone. Simply, you know. And I think in order to talk to everyone, you need also to, you know, think of him as someone who could evolve and change. And people do change. When you put someone on the screen, regardless of how extremist is he, when you put him on the screen, he behaves differently. And his discourse becomes more moderate in general. And I have in my mind something that I say always, that the camera has effect on extremists and on many other people because it leads them to be a little bit more rational in their thinking, because now they are not preaching in dark corners for their converts. They are reaching to the public. They need to sound a little bit more reasonable. So always talking to the people and allowing them to speak is important in media and important in politics.
Since you asked me to make a quick comment, I am probably quite publicly aligned with Brent Scowcroft and Zbigniew Brzezinski and a number of other people, Tom Pickering, Carla Hills, even Paul Volcker and others, have not called for the United States necessarily to bilaterally engage with Hamas right away, but to end the isolation of Hamas and the punishments and penalties on other allies who might do it. The French come to mind in particular. My view is that the political terrain in the region won't allow one not to eventually deal with and sort of sort that out. Doesn't mean you appease bad behaviors, but not to have an engagement to me doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in terms of driving our policy forward. So I do believe in ending the isolation of Hamas there. And let me just say one thing about the Obama administration. The folks that matter in making these decisions are struggling over this themselves, and a lot of that struggling is going on right now, this week as we speak. Very well meeting, some who've come from the Center for American Progress, folks want to try to make Mahmoud Abbas and Fatah and others, give them another opportunity at legitimacy and looking like winners, because they've been so undermined, whether it's been Israeli governments or by the United States at various points. Their legitimacy and credibility has been undermined. And so they're trying now to show that negotiations and moderate players can be winners and deliver, positive public goods to their people. My problem is that in the current environment, I call that the too much, too late strategy. And fundamentally, it depends upon you not taking into account at all what has happened under the Bush administration and how that group collapsed in terms of legitimacy in the eyes of their people. So I don't know. Dealing with Hamas is not a quick fix to anything, but not finding a way to sort of look at it probably continues the incrementalism and inertia that's been preventing any sort of leap forward. I believe there's no incrementalist way to solve many of these contending issues in the Middle East. You've got to begin in a very Nixonian way, begin imagining things that change the way gravitational forces have taken us. That requires strategic leaps of doing some things that seem quite impossible today, but you've got to begin thinking about a very different vision. So I am definitely an engager. This gentleman here. I also want to ask before we get here, Fox News, CNN, BBC, all have moved into the blog arena, and I'm a blogger. And you see Anderson Cooper's got his blogs, and Other people. Are you guys? I should know this, but I haven't seen it on the Al Jazeera English site. Nor are you promoting bloggers? Do you have Al Jazeera writers that are bloggers? How does blogging fit into your media awareness?
Actually, as you know, new media in particular for us is a great opportunity, and we defend it. Al Jazeera is known in the region that it is the TV station that defend bloggers, because most of them or a lot of them face a lot of difficulty from regime. Some of them were arrested. Some of these blogs were deleted and so on. Always we open our doors for that, and we encourage this. And we have one of the most active, actually, units of new media in the region. We have encouraged a lot of blogging. There is a free website that Al Jazeera supported from the beginning. In Arabic, it's called Al Jazeera Talk. It is regarded now as the most popular blogging site in the Arab world, where it's open for journalists, open for the public even to write. It is not associated with Al Jazeera directly, because what is written there is not necessarily a representation of Al Jazeera. It is open forum of people to say whatever they want to say. But it is definitely given the opportunity by Al Jazeera. AlJazeeraTalk.com or .net. AlJazeera.net itself as a website, by the way, is the most popular in the Arab world. Al Jazeera Net English, 60% of the traffic comes from the United States of America. We are in a process now of developing more blogging within the website itself. So very soon we are going to have that integrated in Al Jazeera Net English and Al Jazeera Net Arabic.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I wanted to ask the source of the anti-Shia movement in Al Jazeera, especially in Iraq and in the Gulf, Shia Arabs. I'm excluding Lebanon. What is the source of that? Is it your policy or the Emir of Qatar's policy? Second part of the question regarding the Saudi-Qatari relationship, you talked about the opinion and the other opinion, and the fact that you don't receive instructions from the politicians, but everybody knows in the Arab media here, I'm not sure about the Americans, that following the Qatari-Saudi improving relations, Qatar reported on Saudi Arabia like a 6-year-old ballerina. You don't report on Saudi Arabia. You don't invite any critics. Your coverage actually is even much softer than the Saudi press itself. So, where does that order come from? From the Qatari Emir or from Sheikh Thamar?
You know what is interesting? That we are saying now that we have anti-Shia sentiment. The brother behind you said that we are pro-Iran, which is Shia. You know. Yeah, exactly. So we are anti the Shia Arabs, pro the Shia Persians. And really, I mean, I can listen to a lot of things, and I have done. And what is interesting about Al Jazeera has created so much diversity of opinion about itself that we are not, you know, I think we have been criticized by all kinds of people. You say that we are anti-Shia in the Arab world, not in Iran. He said that we are pro Persian Shia and pro Hezbollah, which is a Shia again. Okay. So
sounds like you're doing your job.
Of course, I say that we are not. I mean, definitely. And a lot of our people who are working in our newsroom are Shia. And a lot of our analysts who are associated with Al Jazeera are Shia. I myself, when I was in Baghdad, I did not differentiate. I did not actually know who was Shia and who was Sunnah. Later on, I was educated thanks to Mr. Bremer when he decided to have the sectarian governing council. We started discovering who is Shia and who is Sunnah. That was not part of our culture, that was not part of our judgment, and it will never be at all. The issue of Saudi Arabia in the past did not allow us to cover from within Saudi Arabia. So the only source that we had at that moment in time was opposition people and certain kind of places. Right now, at this moment in time, we are allowed to cover from within Saudi Arabia. Whether the relationship between Qatar and Saudi Arabia is enhancing or deteriorating, at least now we are balancing the story through actual field reporting from Saudi Arabia, which in my opinion, this is what every journalist should do. If they do not allow us to report from there, unfortunately the screen sometimes looks not balanced because of the lack of their voice. We have never stopped the Saudis from appearing on the screen. It was their choice not to appear on the screen, and now it is their choice to appear on the screen. Like, actually, at this moment in time, the Iraqis do not appear. The Iraqi government has taken a hostile attitude against Al Jazeera, and they are not allowing themselves to appear on Al Jazeera. But we are continuing to be one of the most, coverage, the best coverage on Iraq. Okay, we may have many opposition leaders, but not because we would like to introduce many opposition leaders, because the other side is not allowing us to have a bureau. As you know, for 4 years now, we are not allowed to cover within Iraq because of the government ban on Al Jazeera.
Very back, and then here.
Al Milliken, AM Media. What pressure has been put on Al Jazeera for its coverage and images of death, collateral damage, and suffering? And since its beginning, has Al Jazeera changed its editorial policy or practice in that regard?
So covering violence.
In 2004, in July 2004, Al Jazeera launched its Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct, which was a result of a few months of deliberation within our newsroom. And that was launched actually in a forum that hosted more than 150 international journalists in Doha. We do have very clear rules on issues related to graphic scenes. We do not, for example, show close shots of fragmented limbs and bodies and so on and so forth. And we do have also very clear standards on reporting conflicts in order not to go far against our sensitive audience. However, we also do show images of war and destruction and people who die. Maybe these images are not the close shots. We don't want to pick up certain images which are awful, unless, unfortunately, sometimes when things happen on air, as it happened lately in Gaza, when our reporting was live on air, and we were confronted by certain images that was deleted immediately after the first time that was shown live. The philosophy of Al Jazeera is the following. You should show what destruction is all about. Otherwise, you will cover up the ugly face of the war. But when you show it with responsibility. So you do not go also extremely to the other side.
This gentleman. You're doing a great job. We're live on the show, so we have to go to a certain
Thank you very much. I'm Alan Kiesler of CNO Resources. I wondered if you would comment on the film Control Room. Do you think it was a fair portrayal of Al Jazeera? Did you participate in making it? It obviously covered your terrain.
We did not participate, of course, in making it. It was actually during the war. It has introduced certain aspect that was seen by a foreign journalist who come to Al Jazeera. And some of the people at that moment in time seen Al Jazeera as something, black box, They don't understand what's happening there. They imagined journalists with long beards and, anchor women with headscarf sitting, trying to support Taliban and Saddam Hussein. Unfortunately, that was an image, because if you listen to what Mr. Ramsfeld had to say about us, it was really difficult to imagine a newsroom with people like every other newsroom doing business like any other newsroom. So Control Room introduced that perspective about Al Jazeera, I must say. Natural, and they spent good time in the newsroom projecting that. Do I feel that it does represent Al Jazeera philosophy, Al Jazeera understanding of journalism? I'm not sure. But I can say it does introduce something different from the stereotyping and image that was, at that time, very common.
Yes.
My name is Mark Nadell. I have a question about whether you've reached out to schools, high schools, colleges, and if so, are there teachers who want to show a sign watching a particular show or a particular issue, or is there resistance that you're showing facts and they need to learn what the government wants them to learn and not be confused by facts?
You mean here in the States? Or
No,
in the Arab world?
in Arab countries. Do you reach out? Do you have relationships with schools? It's Department of Education, I guess, where or individual schools or a teacher. I'm sorry. I guess I'm asking multiple questions.
Yeah.
Whether you're reaching out and whether you're aware that schools.
Actually, I would say Al Jazeera. Definitely, we speak to everyone because our audience from every sort of and rank of and age. However, also Al Jazeera launched in association with Qatar Foundation Al Jazeera Children, which is supposed to target children and introduce educational programs to them. Qatar Foundation is the sole owner of it, but Al Jazeera also participated in forming and founding the channel. And we do try through, at this moment in time, few projects that we have in mind to speak mainly to people who are under 13 years old, especially children and youth, young people, either through the screen. By the way, Al Jazeera nowadays is not one channel. We have, by the end of this year, we'll have about 14 channels now. So we have various kind of channels, from sport to documentary to live, like C-SPAN channel, and we have many other channels as well that are under construction at this moment in time. So yes, we do target this sector of the audience through certain kind of programs and through certain kind of approaches. The education community, I think we don't have a specialized education channel, but we do engage them in discussion about crisis of education in the Arab world and the problems that they are facing. They are always represented on the screen, and we have some kind of discussion. But I cannot argue that we have specialized, directed channel towards the issue of education in the Middle East.
Let me just ask one question. You know, I see Will Stebbins here, who's head of the bureau here in Washington, and I'm lucky enough to be on the Al Jazeera English section. Sometimes I'm on Al Jazeera Arabic, and it is interesting because you walk around an Arab airport and people say, "Oh, aren't you that guy?" But I have noticed that your Al Jazeera Arabic content is largely completely separate from your Al Jazeera English content. What are the pluses and minuses of that? And do I have the right impression?
Yeah. You know, actually, we do have Al Jazeera Arabic targeting Arab audience in particular, wherever they are in the world. And we reach out to them all over the world. Arabic English is speaking to English-speaking, people. And I understand that the Arab world priorities of news will be different because eventually you are concentrating on issues related to their daily life, and some of them regard Al Jazeera as their domestic channel because you need to, meet certain needs, especially because of the lack also of other channels in their countries. Some of these countries are only governments are controlling channels. However, we decided from the beginning that Al Jazeera Arabic and Al Jazeera English, both of them, they will have the same spirit of reporting, but we will not have one common newsroom. The priorities for Al Jazeera Arabic will be different from the priorities of Al Jazeera English. The same professional standards, same rules, and same understanding of journalism. And we have intensive discussion always between the two teams. We have one shared editorial board. We have most of our bureaus now talk to each other, actually not only integrated with each other, but again, we do not have Al Jazeera English as translation of what Al Jazeera Arabic has to say. And I think that is much more wise to have because, in my opinion, Al Jazeera English at this moment in time have succeeded in 2.5 years, 3 years only, to introduce something different and to conquer new territories. Now we have audience in at least 140 million households all over the world. And from South Africa up to Russia, we gain a lot of popularity and audience.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Jared Levy, Interpress Service. Two quick questions. Number one, I understand that Al Jazeera in Yemen just got into some hot water with somebody for the reporting you're doing in the south. Can you elaborate a little bit on where those threats came from and what's going on there? And number two, in terms of U.S. media, either print or television, who do you think is the most successful in reporting on the Middle East?
From? Sorry?
Which U.S. news outlet, either print or television, is the most successful in reporting on the Middle East?
Okay, thank you.
Good luck with that.
You are putting me in trouble. First of all, in Yemen, unfortunately, during the last few days, we have faced the difficulty with the opposition and with the government. So with the opposition, unfortunately, our reporters were attacked in the south from some angry mob. They're demanding that their voice should be heard immediately and so on and so forth. And that led to some kind of attack against them. And one of our journalists was injured. And on the other hand, we have received threats from the government to close down the bureau as well, because they felt that what we broadcast on Al Jazeera is inciting violence in the south. So we have pressure actually from both parties. Of course, the people in general are much more friendly than governments. But at that particular incident that you are referring to, it was actually from some angry demonstrators who attacked Al Jazeera, and then later on from the government as well, who threatened to close down. And they came out publicly demanding, some members even representing the ruling party demanding from the parliament to issue a decision to close down Al Jazeera bureau.
Is that still pending?
It is. Now we are actually continuing. So far, our bureau is still open and functioning with a lot of restraints, I must say. It is not freely that our correspondents and camera people could roam the country and film wherever they like. There are a lot of restraints. Some of these images are confiscated, and some of these are not allowed to be broadcast to our headquarters. So we still face troubles in Yemen. But to go back to the second question, I cannot pick up one particular, I read the blog, it is beautiful. And I read actually a few other blogging sites. I feel that a lot of people are really brilliant and they are reporting the Middle East in particular with new alternative, different angle of reporting, not enforcing stereotyping and certain kind of thinking. And also, I look at, some news, of course, CNN World, is available. And we look at it, New York Times, we read as well, the New York Times always, I think a lot of our journalists do. So, we have different sources in the States. Yeah.
Let me just take this last question from this gentleman. I sort of see through the lights here. Are there two back there? Okay.
Thank you. John Iskander from the Foreign Service Institute. Two related questions. One is, it seems to me whether you like it or not, you're part of the Arab Cold War that's happening right now, where there's Al Arabi and Al Jazeera, and you guys are on different sides. You're understood to be on different sides. I don't say that you intend to be, but what's your feeling about that?
Yeah.
And then related to the Al Arabiya question, is it like Pepsi and Coke where you need each other, or do you feel like it's a real fight to for the soul of the Arab populace?
Absolutely wonderful question.
Yeah. Definitely, we are not Pepsi and Coke. To start with, we have adopted a philosophy of reporting about the Middle East. We put the human being at the center of our editorial policy. We are a TV station that has maybe covered intensively the dynamics of the society more than concentrating on figures of government and people who have already been at the center of attention. We have never had friendly relationship with governments. However, we have very friendly relationship with people. So that was, sometimes we are accused that we are populist channel. I argue that we are not. I argue that a lot of things happening in the Middle East are not happening in press conferences, not happening in meeting rooms, are happening on the margin. Without understanding the people themselves, the social and cultural fabric of the society, without embedding yourself with the public and listening carefully to what everyone has to say, meeting with people and allowing them to speak on your channel from various walks of life, I think we cannot reflect the Middle East as it's supposed to be reflected. Some other channels would prefer to be more on the side of what governments say and what governments do. It is unfortunately, maybe fortunately, is not our actually philosophy of reporting. Governments are there, government officials appear on Al Jazeera, but we don't see ourselves a TV station that is focusing on the center or is just repeating what politicians are talking about or alienating ourselves with certain governments. This is what Al Jazeera, and I don't want to talk about anyone else. Yeah.
Wadah, let me just, before I bring this to a close, ask you just a question. As you look at your network and you look at your achievements and successes, what would you say is the biggest deficit, the thing that Al Jazeera isn't getting right quite yet, that you and your management of the network are really applying yourself to, that you think you've got to overcome?
Two major challenges, actually, we have pointed out in our strategy. The first one is to reach out to more youth, and this is what we are intending to do very soon. I think, while everyone is busy talking about politics and conflicts, the new generation, 60% of the Arab world actually are youth, would like to go ahead with their life, would like to see something different. And sometimes politics is monitored and people follow politics with certain age. So this is number one. And the second issue is more interactivity, integrating a new media in the traditional media itself, reaching out to certain platforms that go beyond traditional means. So we would like to include that as well in our editorial programming cycles.
Well, I just want to say that I'm thrilled that the U.S. government finally came to its senses and got you the visa to come over here. I will be blogging later in the week in my own, with what I'm allowed to share about the important meetings that Wadah Khanfar and his team from Al Jazeera are having in the U.S. government. Not to be a friend of the U.S. government, but it's one thing to have access and not have access. And I think it's very clear, and I can say this without you having to say it, that looking at the itinerary, whether the meetings go well or not, there are good meetings, and it seems to me that at least the Obama administration is trying to push reset. We'll see what happens. And it's a great pleasure and privilege to have you here in Washington. I know you're speaking at the Council on Foreign Relations later in the week in New York. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.